What's up, book friends? I've been doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of depressed person things, but most importantly, I've finished some more books to talk about. Today I want to talk about what might have become, quite possibly, my favorite book in the Cosmere. It's not really a book, I guess, it's more of a novella, but The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson has become one of my favorite pieces of writing. The Emperor's Soul takes place on the planet Cell, which is the same planet as Elantris. The timeline for where Elantris takes place versus the Emperor's Soul is a bit up in the air. We know Elantris happens first, but the Emperor's Soul doesn't give us a lot of the outside world. It's very much in 2 rooms for the most part, so it's after it, not technologically significantly after it, but it could be 100 years, it could be a few months, who knows. The magic for this story focuses on these stamps that a forger can carve to tap into the cognitive and spiritual realms. Whatever is stamped will be affected in those realms and then change on the physical realm. So you can take like a dinky little desk and then boom, stamp it, and then all of a sudden it's like a royal, it's the 3rd desk from those boats. What's the name of those desks? The Resolute desk? It's a 3rd Resolute desk. It's probably got secret passages in it too. But the most important thing for getting an object to change when you stamp it is that you have to be convincing enough on those 2 realms. To successfully make changes in the physical realm, a forger must understand the history of an object and be able to come up with a plausible, different history that could fit this object. So, say an artist got sick one day and he couldn't finish it, and therefore it's more dilapidated, you would change the history to be, it was still made by that artist, but he wasn't sick that day, and so he was able to create a masterpiece. That small change is probably plausible enough to hold on. For most inanimate objects, stamping them can be pretty indefinite on the changes. You can also stamp people with these, and they are less static than an object, so they're not going to last indefinitely. This magic is still of Cell, and warning, we're about to get into deep Cosmere territory. As much, this magic is pulling from the door, which is what is left of the shards of devotion and dominion after Odium walked over and caused a ruckus. The door, unlike most other investiture shardic sources, is stuck in the cognitive realm as compared to the spiritual realm, and as such, the magic that's gotten from the door is geographically locked. So if you're in the area where forgers can use their magic, the further you get away from that, the less powerful that magic is. Similar to how Elantrians have to be in Elantris to be able to use their magic. All of the magics on Cell follow this similar idea, though they go about it in different ways and they can change different things. Where in the Aeon Door can use their magic to write runes in the air, the forgers are carving into their little stamp boys. And the stamps seem far more one-to-one with a programming language, even so as to the point where if you want to have way more than you can fit on a stamp, you can have a subset of stamps or a subscript that you can call on your main stamp, and as long as it's close by, it'll still have those attributes when you stamp it. Realmatics and forgery kind of go hand in hand. If you're a forger, you have to have some pretty good understandings of Realmatics, even if it's kind of through this religious lens that it seems to be in this story. I would probably argue that any given forger on Cell probably has more understanding than any other average magic user in the Cosmere. In The Emperor's Soul, we follow a character named Shai. She is both a magical forger, but also an art forger. Naturally, as art forgers do, she was trying to forge this dope scepter to try and steal from the Empire, and she got caught by a certain fool, a certain angular-faced man who may or may not be one to play the fool of emperors and other planets. I don't know who it could be. Shai is approached in jail by what is essentially the Royal Council, and they need to use her forging abilities to recreate the Emperor's mind, because he kind of got a sudden onset case of arrow in the skull, and while they were able to physically heal him, he's brain dead. They, being pretty staunch objectors to the idea of forgery, except for when it fits their needs, have no knowledge about it, and thus need Shai, this master forger, to be able to step in. They're also really against human forging and call it an abomination, but they need the Emperor to be recreated in all of his memories, all of his emotions, all of his actions, because they are a political party and they need to hold power over the Empire, and should the Emperor not be there, well, there goes all their power. But more importantly for Gautona, the eldest member of the council, he just wants his friend back. This story is quite honestly amazing. It hits a lot of the points that I'm already pretty interested in, both in the Cosmere and just in stories in general. This might be a little bit of a biased review, but objectively, this story is doing a lot, and it won an award for a reason. You have the main story, an interesting slow-going story following a master forger as she has to pull off the greatest forgery of her career. It's very white-collar in this way. The criminal working for the crime enforcers and the person that is in charge of the criminal, doesn't understand why they do what they do, and then the art forger who's constantly trying to think of ways of how they're going to be able to get out of this, but they're still doing the forgeries because they forge because they love to. This is a tried and true story archetype that really puts characters against each other and shows their drives and how they can line up in times and how they just misunderstand each other. And I think that is something that Brandon Sanderson does really well. I think he normally can pick an archetype and explore it in very interesting ways, even if they can be pretty typical. But beyond this archetype, you have this meta story that's going on in the background that Brandon Sanderson is kind of exploring here. This kind of meta commentary on writing and character development. Beautifully, this magical system that he has devised, where one must fully know something's history or someone's history, and also know how to make realistic lies that will be concrete enough to hold on to this world, tied with this plot archetype of opposing character ideals, but they just misunderstand each other because they don't fully understand each other. These two things really create this beautiful Dragon Ball Z fusion. And it flows so easily in this story that Brandon is weaving. And as like a third thing, from like the Cosmere perspective, this story is doing a lot for Realmatics. This story explains Realmatics in such a way that I don't think I've seen explained in any of the other ones that I've read. There are a few that I haven't read that I just do a lot of research on when I want to give you the informational videos, and I'm gonna get to them, but that's a lot of words. So many words. But the Realmatics in this, I feel, are so visually clear to a reader when you go through it. And that's really dope for people who are really into the Cosmere like I am. So this story has 3 levels, essentially, that it's working on. In the most abstract, it's exploring this Cosmere science. In the less abstract, it's exploring character development and writing as a whole. And then in the least abstract, it's telling this story of 2 characters who have to come together to be able to save the Emperor. And it all comes together super great. It's heisty, even though it's really mostly just 2 characters sitting in a room talking scene to scene. They might be different characters, but that's essentially what you could describe most scenes in this story as. But the fact that it's a novella kind of makes that pacing feel really good. I think there's a world where the story was a bit longer, and I think it might have dragged. There's good skips here. We see progress the whole time. No scene feels wasted, but I don't feel like I need more from this story. I really do feel like this is a well-pruned story from Brandon Sanderson, which I know is a complaint from a lot of people, that there's a bit of fluff here and there, which I enjoy, but I can notice in this story that it's not there and it feels good. I also know that Brandon Sanderson has this meme where his prose is kind of milquetoast at worst, but the prose in this story is beautiful. He has a lecture that he does where he's talking about this need to ground things in concrete, and once you do that, you're able to kind of abstract out and be more beautiful in the way that you talk about things, but without that concrete grounding, you'll never be able to go to the abstract without confusing your readers. And because this story is so grounded in what Brandon Sanderson already does, it's grounded in character development and it's grounded in writing, he's able to be way more free, be way more abstract with it, because he is so easily able to get those concrete ideas out there very quickly to a reader. He is able to be at times incredibly beautifully abstract while still being so clear in his prose. This is not something I feel he does often enough, but I can foresee that when you're talking about big flying armor wizards in the sky with their omega lightsabers, you may need to be a bit more straightforward with the reader to get as much clarity as Brandon Sanderson wants us to have in those scenes. The story also touches on the ethical idea of the ship of Theseus, with what it means to forge a human soul. Is that still the Emperor when he wakes up? Is this still Gautona's friend? What is his name? Is this truly Gautona's friend, or is it just a shade, an echo of what used to be? Is a clone really just a copy, or is it its own being? When you teleport, does your body get disintegrated in one place and then reintegrated in another place, and your conscience moves over? Or is it really that in one you get killed and you experience that, but that doesn't matter because the one that gets cloned in the other one, that's a new experience, but it seems like you've just never stopped experiencing it because you came to be in this new body. And what does that mean? What is human experience? You know, classic, just fun, totally normal, fine, non-existential questions being explored here. I could honestly talk on extreme length on the granular level from scene to scene of this story and not shut up. I think every conversation that is had between characters in this story is doing a ton of work on all 3 planes of that this story is being told, to be able to get across to the reader what Brandon Sanderson's trying to do here. Not only giving ideas on how to be a better writer, but how to be able to better understand people. Like even the depth that you divine about a person, about why they're doing something or another, in real life is probably not the whole story. No single or even few things impact how a person will be able to make decisions or just be the way they are. It's so much more of a tapestry that comes together to make each person, and that's beautiful. And this story is able to showcase that while also giving this amazing, uplifting, kind of heisty, fun, schemy, funny story and explore just how beautiful the individuality of every person is. I think perhaps my one gripe of this story is while we've got some amazing characters, like the soldiers that are just kind of guards get some depth, this blood forger that we see gets some depth even though he's only in a few scenes. There are members of the council that we do see, and they do a lot throughout the story. And even Shy, when they take some actions, Shy's like, oh, I already knew this is what they were gonna do. So typical of this kind of person. It's not undermining it in any major way, and it's certainly not something I really thought about until after I was done with the story. It never stuck out to me. But some characters just feel like they lack a little bit of depth in this character depth exploration story. That's kind of weird. Or perhaps we just aren't gifted enough of the information, so what seems like really shallow actions from them are actually driven by 1,000 more things, and we can never know that. And this is just precisely the point that I'm describing them as flat characters, but that's me jumping to a conclusion that I don't have the information to be able to do because we weren't given the scenes with them. Maybe this is just the 17th layer to Brandon Sanderson's maniacal machine to get me to read even more of his books. I don't know. Who knows? That's my complaint. In the end, I think this is an amazing read. It's like 40,000 words. That's like one C.S. Lewis Jesus anachronism, or like a sad puppy story in length. You don't even have to really read anything else in the Cosmere to get a good enjoyment out of this story. The Cosmere stuff is just kind of bonus extra fun. Read it in a vacuum and forget about whoever this Grandin Branderbuns person is. But remember the story. Remember the themes and the comedy. Remember the beautiful prose that you get from moment to moment in this. And the point that every person is far more of a woven tapestry than we'll ever be able to understand. I give this a 2 out of 10. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I can't wait to talk more about Brandon Sanderson. I've got a lot more Cosmere stuff lined up in the next few weeks. And so if you're excited for that, if you liked anything I had to say here, hit that like button. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll catch you in the next one. And until then, stay lit.